Welcome to the Star Wars Connection. My name is Felix, and today I'm fangirling about the Solo: A Star Wars Story trailer with Mary.
Hi, guys!
So I'll admit, I was nervous about Solo due to the production issues earlier in the year, but the trailer has me actually pretty pumped about this movie. The first thing that really stood out to me was Lando Calrissian. So what is going on with that fur coat? I love it. I really love Donald Glover's acting in Community, and I've been excited to see him as Lando since the day he was announced. And the preview only made me more excited for this. He looks so awesome, and he looks suave as ever. What did you think about Lando?
Well, I have to admit, I've never seen Donald in anything, so I can't really comment on that, but I was really excited about his resemblance to Billy Dee Williams more than anything. It's uncanny, and so I can't wait to see him as Lando. I mean, because like when those pictures of him and, oh god, I can never pronounce, picture of them two came out. Sorry?
Alden,
thank you. Alden. I can't pronounce it to save my life, but when those two pictures came out of them together, I was like, all the attention was on him, not on Alden, because Aldo didn't look a thing like Harrison Ford. But he, oh my goodness, like, that's a young Billy Dee Williams right there. So that's what I was excited about, and I'm also curious about his relationship with his droid, since we don't see her in Empire Strikes Back. So I'm guessing she'll sadly be a fatality in the film.
Yeah, because by the time we got to Empire Strikes Back, he had Lobot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, I agree with you. He has, like, the Lando grin down pat. It's kind of amazing.
Oh my god. And even, like, that, hey kid, you know, just the movements and everything. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the other thing that I was kind of excited about, just that jumped out at me, was the brand spanking new Millenium Falcon. And of course, it makes me wonder, like, what happened?
Han, you trashed the place.
I mean, it looks like, if you've ever seen Spaceballs, it looks like that trashy Winnebago in Spaceballs. Like, it's just, by the time that we see it in A New Hope. So, but then it starts out so, like, absolutely just pristine white. It's so weird. You know, if I were Lando in The Empire Strikes Back and I saw the Falcon like that, I think I'd turn Han over to Vader, too.
I was just like more of the fact that, you know, it's just typical Han, and the age he is there, I'm guessing he's in his late teens, early 20s. It looks like a teenage boy's bedroom, basically. Just like, you know, everywhere is just messed up. You know, so like going to the shiny new thing and then just destroy it, leave things lying around, the walls are grimy, yeah. It's like teenage bedroom, almost. Typical Han.
Yeah, he needs like a mom to come in and help him clean it. But, well, you know,
Uncle Chewie's not going to clean it.
Right? Oh, gosh. So talking about Han, like, as a teenage boy, now we come to Kira, who is apparently characterized as a femme fatale. I bring her up because we see this scene in the trailer of them kind of like cruising around in a speeder. So it's like a teenage boy and his girlfriend. So do you think she's going to be Han's girlfriend in this, like a love interest?
Oh yeah. Had no doubt about that when she was cast. It's just, it remains to be seen what happens, which we'll get to later. Yeah, what else do you want to talk about?
So she's supposed to be kind of a femme fatale character from what I have read. We haven't really seen a main female character like this in Star Wars before. So I'm excited to see her in action and kind of see where her character arc goes. She's dressed in black and red at one point, and there's been mention, again, in a magazine interview, that we'll find out the reason Han never mentions her again in the rest of the movies. So personally, at this point, I'm thinking along the lines of her either betraying the group or dying or disappearing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I was slightly disappointed by Emilia Clarke's casting because, I'm sorry to like Game of Thrones fans and Emilia Clarke fans, but I don't really rate her acting that much. But then again, I've only seen her in Game of Thrones, so I am looking forward to seeing her in something else where hopefully she can shine with working with a different director and writer. But the main reason why I was kind of disappointed was because I was hoping for a non-white actress in the role as the main heroine to shake up the diversity, as we've only had white brunettes as the main heroines. I wouldn't trade Daisy Ridley as Rey for the world, but we've had her as Rey, we've had obviously Carrie Fisher as the original heroine, Leia, and of course Felicity Jones as Jyn, so it would be nice to shake that diversity up a bit instead of having another white brunette.
I agree. I mean, it is kind of weird to have another white brunette as the lead female. I think she's number 5, right? Because then there's Padme too.
Oh, so, yeah, of course, Natalie Portman.
Right? And then...
But then again, To be fair, that Natalie Portman does make sense because she's Leia's mum. She looks like her.
Right. I mean, to me, like, those are the two white brunettes that make sense, Leia and Padme. I would love for them to have cast a woman of color. And I see that we do have a woman of color, but she's not in, like, the lead female role, it doesn't look like.
Is that Tandy Newton's character? It is, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
We'll get to her later.
Yes, but you know, even if they did go ahead and stick with Emilia, you know, could they not at least break up the brunette trend? Like, it's not like we haven't seen her blonde before, and it's kind of an entire galaxy. It's not like a small town in the Midwest, so they have people besides white brunettes. It's just kind of weird at this point.
I will say Emilia does look good with blonde hair, and also even in the EU, you know, they did shake it up a bit. I mean, we had redheads like Mara Jade, my favourite, and of course, you know, like blondes like Danny Kui and Tahiri Vila, so please, non-brunettes, please.
Exactly. So pulling this back to the idea of Han's love interest, do you have any ideas about any connections to the EU that they might be pulling from?
I know there's been a lot of controversy but it's not the first time he's had a love interest, you know, before Leia. In the EU, there was Bria Tharin in the Han Solo trilogy, and she was his love interest and first love in those books. You know, plenty of people have first loves in their lives before finding their soulmate. And Han and Bria's story was really tragic. They escaped a life of slavery from the Besadi Hut clan together. Bria had become addicted to a drug and felt that she couldn't stay with him because she felt she would become a burden to him. So she left him in order to give him a life and find a way to overcome her addiction, which led her to the rebellion. They reunited sometime in the future, and while they still loved each other, Bria felt she couldn't jeopardize the rebellion to be with Han, and so left him again. And later she was captured by the Empire and committed suicide before they could interrogate her, and Han, of course, was just devastated. I'm wondering, could this inspire Kira's story? She could get captured by the Empire because there were you know, glimpses of an Imperial officer in the trailer, and it looks like Han was part of the Imperial Academy, or he was an Imperial before being chucked out, which again is similar to the EU. And also the characters are different, but like Rogue One and Dark Forces, there could also be similarities. Maybe Kira gives her life in some sort of epic sacrifice, like Holdo in The Last Jedi. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, she could. I mean, and I haven't thought too deeply about Kira's character, aside from being just generally excited that she is like the femme fatale type, because we haven't really had that type before. We tend to have like the tough woman character. So Leia's tough, Padme's a tough girl, Rey's a tough girl, Jen's a tough girl, Rose is a tough girl, goodness. Well, I get, you know, Padme is really prettied up.
So's Leia.
Oh, yeah. Leia is, when we get to the Ewok village, yes.
Don't forget that slave outfit, but let's not get into that.
Right.
She strangled Jabba, in that outfit. I mean, yeah. Damn.
Right. But yeah, Kira, you know, she has an air of toughness to her, but she's also, I don't know, there's a different type, it's a different type of pretty. Like, it's a very seductive version of pretty.
Oh, yeah. And like you were saying, she wears black and red at that point, and I think there's one picture of her, like, wearing, like, a black skirt and, like, high boots, I think. And just like, yes. Damn, that's just...
And doesn't she have a cape on with that, too?
I thought that
was kind of cool for a female character. I think isn't Phasma the only one that we've seen with a cape?
Yes, I think so. I mean, in the films,
right.
Mara Jade had a cape in the EU. That was sort of like another seductive female with that catsuit and the cloak. But again, she's not in the films, so this is the first time we've kind of seen that in the films, which is quite exciting.
Oh, yes. There was another love interest that Han had in the Marvel comics, right? Yeah, I think you were mentioning something to me about that before.
Yes, there was. There was a character called Sana Starros, and the big controversial. She was originally introduced as Sana Solo in the comics set between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So, yep, she was originally introduced as Sana Solo, Han's wife, and she claimed that Han had run off again. And this decision was so controversial with fans that, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I personally think that this character was originally meant to be Han's wife, who he swindled. Because, you know, he was that kind of guy. You know, like, we've seen that deleted scene of him in A New Hope with another woman before approached by, you know, Luke and Obi-Wan to take them to Alderaan. Yeah, and I reckon he was going to divorce her at some point. Because of the reaction, Lucasfilm retconned Sana Solo into Sana Starros, and said that Han and Sana would often pretend to be married in order to swindle people. And so she thought she and Han were going to swindle Leia at some point.
Oh.
Yeah, But personally, I'm really excited to see Han with another love interest, partly because, controversial opinion alert again, I was never a huge fan of the Han and Leia romance. Han was always too macho for me, and I personally think Carrie had more natural chemistry with Mark than Harrison. But yeah, that's my opinion, guys. Please don't hate on me.
No, we could never hate on you, Mary. You know.
Oh, thank you.
I am personally kind of on the other side of the fence. See, I'm like, I like Han and Leia are kind of like an OTP for me. So it's like, oh, don't mess with Han. So, you mentioned that you noticed a tie-in with Han being in Empire military that is pulled from the EU. And so I kind of wanted to get into our tie-ins section because I've noticed quite a few tie-ins. To me, they're tie-ins anyway. I think you might disagree on some of these. We'll go through and see what you think. So, Rogue One had thematic tie-ins with the sequel trilogy. So, for instance, moral ambiguity among the rebels, Cassian offing people to protect his mission. There was Saw's interrogation of Bodhi Rook that involves mind reading. The elevator scene between Jyn and Cassian that we see, another romantic coded elevator scene come up in The Last Jedi between Kylo and Rey. To me, this also tie-ins kind of carry over in the Solo trailer. And so far in the trailer, we know that Han enlisted with the Empire, which I just talked about. So there's kind of a parallel there with Ben joining the First Order. What do you think about that?
I don't know. We assume he joined the First Order because, Luke tried to kill him, and then we don't know the full story, but I think it's because he wanted a sense of purpose. Snoke got into his head as well and sort of manipulated him into joining in the First Order. So maybe there's a small parallel in there where, Han enlists the Empire because maybe he wants a purpose. You never know. If there's a parallel, if Snoke manipulated Ben into joining the First Order, maybe Kira or someone else manipulates Han into joining the Imperials. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just be really interested to see Han's reasoning for joining the Empire military. I mean, and we know part of that is because he wants to be the best pilot in the galaxy, because he directly states that. But I wonder if there were any other reasons behind it too. Han and the Empire, they don't seem like a likely pairing,
Yeah, but I'm guessing like a lot of young militants who join Empire, they don't realize what it is until they've done it.
Yeah.
Gone enlisted. So yeah. Another thing that came up in the EU was Han's reasoning for leaving the Empire was because he found Chewie, and he found out about the Wookiee slaves being sent to build a Death Star. So he rescues Chewie and leaves the Empire behind, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the case here as well. Like, he meets Chewie, finds out what the Empire is doing with slaves, and leaves, because that's one of the most awesome things about Han. He's a smuggler, but the one thing he won't touch is slaves, which is a big moral compass there with Han.
Oh, yeah.
He'll shoot first, but he won't deal in slavery.
Yeah, he's a really interesting, morally ambiguous character. So I'll be really interested to see if they kept that too. That was one of the things that I thought of was like, oh, I wonder if the story is still that Chewie owes him a life debt because of Han rescuing him from the Empire. So we'll see what they kept, We also see in the trailer the dice and the speeder that he's driving with Kira. So if we're getting a backstory on the dice, I think it'll be in this movie. And I feel like they'll be thematically poignant and end up tying in with the sequel trilogy. I don't personally think that they're in the speeder just for show, but I guess we'll see.
You know what? That just makes me more mad that the dice scene in The Force Awakens with Han, like, dice up back in the Millennium Falcon was cut.
Right.
Because it's such a poignant moment now, especially, like, with that scene with Kylo Ren at the end of The Last Jedi. And with Luke, of course, like, first going into the Millennium Falcon. It's annoying that they've cut it. If it's gonna, like, be a callback to this.
Oh, I know. I feel like it would have been more... I mean, it was already emotionally impactful, but I feel like it would have added a layer to that if they had kept that scene in, too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Maybe they stop the speeder to get out and Han goes, oh, I like these, and then grabs them and takes them with him.
So it's just like it's kind of like the blue milk showing up in Rogue One.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I hope this is the last scene of the movie, and I'll be surprised if it isn't. I reckon Han and Lando are going to, like, wager the Millennium Falcon. This will be the very last scene, and Han throws those dice down and says, bring it on, or something like that. He wagers the Millennium Falcon with those dice. I'll be very surprised if that's the last scene.
Oh, right. Well, because in the EU wasn't the story that... Well, no, I mean, that's canon already, that Han won the Falcon from Lando, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so, yeah.
He says it in Empire Strikes Back, I think.
Right. Yeah, it was... Lando says, it was my ship first, so...
Yeah.
Something else I noticed, Han's an orphan who grew up on the streets in the trailer. And of course, this is kind of similar to Rey's background, being an orphan and having to grow up roughing it. So it's kind of a thematic tie-in as far as, you know, the Star Wars franchise seems to favor like orphans and people who do have to grow up roughing it. So it'll tie in nicely, I think, with how Ben relates to Rey and comes to relate to his father in episode 9, which is something that they could throw in.
It's also nice to see with Han growing up, you know, roughing it on the streets, and Rey basically doing the same on Jakku. Han immediately sees himself in Rey because of this when they first meet in The Force Awakens, and that's why he kind of like takes to her a bit, you know, more than he takes to Finn. So that, yeah, it will be like nice showing that. I think we'll definitely get some parallels between the two of them in the Han Solo movie, even if they're just small, little tiny small ones.
Yeah, small things, and sometimes the small things can really matter too, the details.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say one more thing. In the EU, this is just like a little wish list, I really hope they do, but Han's mother's name was Jaina, and he later named his daughter Jaina in remembrance of her, so I'd like it if he like mentions his mother to like Kira or somebody and says her name was Jaina. I think that would be so lovely, especially when and like, spoiler alert for Star Wars Rebels if you have not seen the very last episode, Kanan and Hera's son is called Jason.
Is it Syndulla?
Syndulla, yeah. Thank you. She named their son Jason, and I'm wondering if that's a little callback for the old fans of the EU by calling him that. So it would be really nice if Han's mother is called Jaina in canon like it was in Legends.
That would be a nice detail, wouldn't it? And, you know, I really like that they're throwing the EU fans some bones, because some of us grew up with those stories and they're dear to us. So it's really cool. So one of the other scenes that I noticed that seems to parallel with the sequel trilogy is the scene where Han squares off Old West style with a Sauron-looking new villain. And it's that's reminiscent of Ben and Luke's Old West throwdown in The Last Jedi. In addition to a father-son parallel, we're seeing a continued pull from the Western genre, which is kind of fun.
I loved it's just that one shot in the trailer of Han reaching for his gun, kind of like with the like Knights of Ren, Ancient Knight, whatever the hell they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that shot of his gun. It looks so Western. Like, it reminded me a lot of the old Cowboys versus Indians movie.
Yes.
And it's in a desert as well. So it was just, it was like, wow, they're really going for this.
Yeah, and well, you know, they pulled from the Western genre in A New Hope. When Luke and Obi-Wan meet Han, he's in the cantina, and that's kind of a throwback to like Old West style saloons.
In the bars.
Yeah, just like the worst of the worst go here. So it's really cool to me that they've carried that over into both the sequel trilogy and then apparently in Solo. That's just a really nice touch.
Speaking of those Knights of Ren / Ancient Knight things, what do you think they are?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. That's a really good question. You're talking about the guys that are with the Sauron-looking person.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for the Knights of Ren and was kind of disappointed that we didn't get to see them in The Last Jedi, and really hope that we get to see them in Episode 9, and hope that they're not just like a cool-looking thing. So, although I think that from reading the books, they were already a thing before Ben came along, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they were, yeah.
So they were in established groups.
I think it said that in the Force Awakens encyclopedia, if I remember correctly.
Okay. It's in one of the Aftermath novels. It doesn't specifically name the Knights of Ren, but there's a group that's like the Acolytes of the Beyond that comes up. So that seems very Knights of Ren-esque. So they could be something like that. What do you think?
I think they're not connected to the Knights of Ren, but I think they may be connected to the Force and the old mythological lore. If they are, it won't delve that deep into it, because Han doesn't believe in the Force. You know, like, he mocks the whole idea of the Force and the Jedi and in A New Hope, and admits that he just thought it was mumbo jumbo in The Force Awakens. So personally, I think Tobias Beckett, who's played by Woody Harrelson, is the villain, and could be, this is just pure speculation, but he could be after a Force-related artifact that these guys are guarding in order to sell it to the highest bidder, which is why he's putting two crew together, so if something happens, then Han can take the blame, or die. And maybe the highest bidder could be that Imperial officer we see briefly in the trailer. This artifact could be similar to the Kyber crystal from the EU, a relic which increased a Force user's power tenfold, so maybe they want it for the Death Star or another super-powered weapon, or maybe the reason is just more simple than that, and they are simply guarding just a normal but ancient relic which costs a bomb. And that's why every smuggler is after it, because they want the money. What's interesting about the Kyber crystal is that it was located on a planet called Mimban, and the Han Solo movie is bringing that planet back into canon. It's one of the places that Han and co go to. Now, could this mean that the Kyber crystal is featured and has a connection to these knights? It's possible, but Mimban is a swamp planet, and those knights look like they're on a desert planet, so it's probably more likely that the Empire base is on Mimban, and that's the one Han and Kira escapes from. But who knows? It could be possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I try not to get into specific plot points because it just gets to be such a maze when you start turning over the possibilities, because there's so many different directions that they could go. But that sounds really cool.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, you don't know. I mean, because everybody thought the Vader reveal in Bloodline with Leia would turn out to be a pretty big thing in The Last Jedi because Rian Johnson was involved in the writing process, but it wasn't.
Right.
So we don't know. They could, but they just as easily could.
Yeah, it's fun to speculate, though.
Yes, it is. Speaking of Beckett before, I think he's the villain because it would be refreshing to see the teacher figure be the villain. It would be similar to Gary Shrike from the Han Solo trilogy in the EU. He was also Han's mentor there, and Shrike was horrible. Like, he beat Han as a kid and used him to carry out crimes. I mean, I don't think Beckett will be as vicious, but Shrike actually watched Han before taking him under his wing because he saw his potential, and I think Beckett will do the same in this regard. I think, be watching Han thinking, oh, I can use him for something in the future. I'll keep an eye on him.
Yeah, that's true. He could. And, mentor who turns out to be evil would be a really interesting take. That's a kind of another parallel with Ben because, Ben had Snoke and then Han would have Beckett possibly.
I think it's also quite different as well because not only is Snoke ugly, Beckett is normal. I'm thinking of more along the lines of the major protagonists. Ben is a protagonist, but really I think Rey is the one the audience see,
right.
The audience views through her eyes. So, in A New Hope, Luke had Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace had Qui-Gon. Who else? Anakin had Obi-Wan as well. Ahsoka in the Clone Wars had Anakin. They're all good mentors, and most of them get killed. Rey sees Han get killed. Luke sees Obi-Wan get killed. Obi-Wan sees Qui-Gon get killed. So they're all good mentors to the protagonists who unfortunately bite the dust. And so I think this would really be refreshing if the mentor to the protagonist is evil, basically.
Right, yeah. Oh, it would definitely be interesting. So do you think that Beckett is actually the Sauron-looking guy? Is that a possibility? Or maybe the Sauron-looking guy is a lackey of Beckett's? Or do you think Sauron-looking guy is somebody, totally different?
I think the Sauron-looking guy is completely different, but that would be interesting. What about you? What are your thoughts on Beckett?
On Beckett, my general thoughts are that I really love Woody Harrelson. I like him as the drunk mentor in Hunger Games, so.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that, actually. I forgot he was Katniss's mentor in that.
Yes.
That would, again, be very interesting, because, even though Hamish is drunk, he's still, he tries to be a good mentor to Katniss, so again, that would be a nice parallel to those movies.
Yeah. So I think that he'll play the part of a mentor really well, whether he turns out to be good or evil or shady or, somewhere in between. So he's good at that role. And so I'm excited to see how it plays out on screen. As far as the Sauron looking guy goes, I almost want it to secretly be Kira.
Why is that?
Because we haven't really seen a female villain in the major, we've seen Rey Sloane, but she's just in the books. So I would like to see a female villain, a major female villain in.
Phasma don't count.
Phasma does not count. She doesn't because she's not on screen that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but a major female villain would be so cool. So that's just a hope though. That's headcanon at this point.
What if Kira is in league with Beckett and they're both villains together, after the same thing?
Perfect.
And they're using Han to get what they want.
I would be open to that. That would be awesome.
By the way, who do you think, we mentioned it before, Tandy Newton, who do you think?
She just shows up briefly. I really don't know.
I think she'll be an old flame of Beckett's. I really think that would be cool. kind of similar to Han and Leia, but, you know, like, they're not together, but they're kind of like, you know, they meet up every once in a while and have romance time, and they kind of maybe, like, you know, whenever they do meet up, they snipe at each other and such. That would be so cool.
Yeah, and it'd be funny,
also,
too.
It would be hilarious. Also, she looks really badass, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's some kind of bounty hunter that they've recruited.
Oh, yeah. So there's kind of like a Maz-looking alien on this crew that Beckett has gathered up, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay, so do you think it's Maz or do you think it's somebody completely new?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I'm
me neither.
open to it being Maz.
Was there anything in particular that just like reached out and grabbed you in the trailer? Like something that just made you go, wow, I can't wait to see this movie?
Honestly, and this was a surprise to me too after how I've just described how disappointed I was at his initial casting, but Alden as Han, when I saw him in the trailer, you know, like there's that particular scene where he kind of like smiles at Kira and said, after she says, like, I know what you are, and he goes, what's that? The smile, the hair, like the outfit. I actually believe he's a young Han Solo now. Like, I couldn't believe it. You know, like, when he was first cast, I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't see this guy as a young Harrison Ford. Now I can, and I thought, oh my god, I cannot wait to see him as a young Han Solo. I think it's going to be a really fun movie. What about you?
Right, well, to talk about that a little bit, I mean, I kind of thought the same thing when they initially cast him. And not that I mean, I'll wait and see what his acting is like, but he didn't look like Han. And of course, you know, if you were around for Heath Ledger being cast as the Joker, it was a little bit of the same thing for me.
Yeah.
Where,
and I've also the same thing as Ben Affleck as Batman. Like, everybody ridiculed those choices, and then they turned out to be the best things about the movie. So I would not, you know, both movies. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is it's exactly the same here.
Right. I mean, and that's what I'm thinking is like, because I had my reservations about Ledger as Joker, and then you see Alden as Han in the commercial or the preview, and he has that smile dead on. I mean, the little smirk, the signature Solo smirk.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I think you can tell how much this role means to Alden. And I think, honestly, you know, the reaction to him being cast as Han Solo really must have like made him work harder as well, because he was having, you know, like lunch with Harrison Ford, and also you remember that big controversy where the original directors Lord and Miller were fired. I think it was reported that Alden actually went to Lucasfilm or somebody higher up and said he wasn't happy with what they were doing with the young Han Solo. So I think he really, really cares about it, and I think he's going to kill it.
Yeah, I hope he does. I'm excited to see how his performance shakes out. So it looks really intriguing.
I'm really looking forward to this movie.
Me too. Did you have any last minute things that you wanted to add before we wrapped up here?
Again, to our viewers, I'm so sorry about all the mispronunciations.
What's different?
I can't speak.
Yeah, well, and it's different, like, from actually hearing it to just reading it and thinking how you should pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Rafe Fiennes. You think of Ralph Fiennes when you read it, but it's really, you pronounce it Rafe.
Exactly. So, well, that about finishes up our take on the Solo trailer. Mary, thank you very much for fangirling with me on this trailer today.
You are welcome. Happy to do it.
Yes.
Let's do it again, and we'll probably, sometime in the future when the Solo movie is going to come out, we'll probably have a big predictions podcast and a review. Are you up for that, Felix?
I am absolutely up for that. That sounds like fun.
Yes.
Until next time, viewers, may the Force be with you.
Thanks for listening to us geeking out and theorising about the Han Solo movie. We hope you had as much fun as we did. If you like our stuff, please hit the subscribe button, and you can check us out on Twitter, Tumblr and Mixcloud. If you have any questions, please email us at starwarsconnection09@gmail.com. Until next time, and may the Force be with you.